Now let's study about the transportation in plants. As we have already done, that transportation is very important factor. Like when we studied about the human body, it was clearly mentioned and also seen while we were studying that transportation is very important. So likewise, if we talk about the plants, so in them also the transportation is very important. The reason being, even in them many cells are present and they all require certain substances. And who's going to transport those substances? Obviously, a transporting system is required in plants also. So the transporting system serves this function, that is, it transports the different materials which are required by different parts of plant. So I think you got it, that transportation is essential in plants also, right? Although the process is not that complex, but still it is essential. So if I talk about plants, so like us, they don't have heart, they don't have blood, they don't have RBCs, WBCs, right? So the system is not that complex, but still they possess the transporting system. So the transporting system which is present in plants is called as vascular bundles. They are called as vascular bundles. What elements falls under that category? That is, which elements are regarded as the vascular bundles. So let's study that. So in plants, the vascular bundles, that is the transporting system, that is vascular bundles, they are present in plants. Got it? So the vascular bundles include xylem and it includes the phloem. So we have one is xylem and other we have is the phloem. Now xylem is actually responsible for the transportation of water, and you know that like plant also need water for the photosynthesis or in order to survive, we can say. So how the plants take water? Obviously it takes water through roots, but who's going to transport that water in all parts? So that is done by this vascular bundle, that is the xylem. And like us, they also need food, as we know that the food is synthesized in leaves, because leaves only carries the photosynthetic pigment and they have the ability to photosynthesize. But on the other hand, it is required by all parts of the plant. So who's going to transport that food? That is done by this vascular bundle, that is phloem. So transportation of water to all parts is done by xylem, and translocation of food, not transportation, translocation of food, because that is just the change of location. That is, the food is transported to all parts, but the term here we will use is translocation. So the translocation of food is done by this component, that is phloem. So I think you got it. So we'll take up this one by one. So let's study about the xylem first. So as I told you, xylem is one of the vascular bundle. The reason being, it is a kind of, you can say, the transporting system which is transporting the water to all parts of plant. Now if we look at the xylem, it actually possesses the four components. That means the four component makes the xylem. So what are those four components? We have to list them first, right? And it is quite important. So write it down in your copies that xylem is made up of four components. So the components are, we have vessels, xylem vessels, we have tracheids, xylem tracheids, we have xylem parenchyma, write it down, and fourth we have xylem fibers. We can also say xylem sclerenchyma or you can say xylem fibers. So these are the four components of xylem, that is vessels, tracheids, we have xylem parenchyma and xylem fibers. So if we talk about the first component, that is the xylem vessels, how they look like. You should know about its diagram, because whenever you will get a question, you need to draw all these figures. So let's discuss about the diagram of xylem vessel first, that how they look like. So here we have the xylem vessel. So xylem vessel looks like this. So if somebody asks you to explain this diagram, how you're going to explain it? So you will say that it is formed of the cells which are joined end to end, forming the long tube. The cells joined end to end forming the long tube. Now if we talk about these cells, like the four components I told you, the vessel, the tracheid, the parenchyma and the fibers. So out of these four components, only parenchyma is a living component. Apart from that, all the three components, they are dead. right? They are dead. So in vessels, we'll say that xylem vessels are formed of the dead cells joined end to end, forming a long tube, right? You can see that. But you can also see in this figure that the ends are open. The ends are open. So we can say that it is formed by the dead cells joined end to end, forming a long tube with open ends. And the wall that surrounds the xylem vessel, that is lignified. That means it is made up of lignin. If we talk about its wall, it is formed of cellulose and lignin, right? But there are certain spaces, these highlighted spaces, these are called as pits. These are called as pits, and these are the softer areas, because at this point lignin is absent. Lignin is quite hard. It makes the complete wall hard. But the point where it is absent, those areas are called as soft areas and they are called as pits. Got it? If somebody asks you about xylem vessels, please tell me how you're going to define that. So you're going to tell him that xylem vessels are one of the component of xylem. They are made up of dead cells. Dead cells join end to end, forming a long tube with open ends, right? And the wall is made up of cellulose and lignin. There are softer areas called as pits. These areas, at these points, the lignin is absent. That is the reason they are soft in nature. So they are called as soft areas. Now moving on to the second component. So xylem vessel, I think it's clear. Now let's talk about trachete, how they look like. So this is how the trachete look like, and you can easily, by looking at figure, you can tell me that what is the shape of trachete. Obviously it is spindle shaped, and here the ends are closed. It is spindle shaped and the ends are closed, and in it also you can see that the softer areas, these pits are present. So how you're going to explain about trachete? It is also formed of dead cell, and the cells are spindle shaped, having the pits also in it, the softer parts. Now third, moving on to the parenchyma. Now we all know that what is parenchyma? Parenchyma is the cell where it can be of different shape. It carries the cytoplasm, it carries the nucleus. That is the reason it is living in nature. So this is xylem parenchyma, right? Fourth we have is the xylem fibers. So this is how the xylem fibers look like, and again they are dead in nature. They are dead in nature. So these four components form the vascular bundle, that is xylem. So I think you got it. Now let's move on that how they help in transportation of water from roots to the aerial parts of plant. So let's study about the transportation now, that how the movement take place. So the process of movement of water from roots to aerial parts of plant, that means to all parts of plant, is called as ascent of sap. The process is specified by a special name, and the process of transportation of water is called ascent of sap, right? So now we are going to study about the phenomena of ascent of sap. So before studying it, you should know about the structure of leaf and the root and how they are interconnected. So if we will look at its structure, so it looks like this. You can see that here we have leaf, right? We have upper epidermis, we have lower epidermis, and in the middle we have the mesophyll tissue. And we know that mesophyll tissue is formed of two types of cells. One is this palisade cells, and on the lower side we have the spongy cells. And you can also see that there is xylem present in it. There is xylem vessel present in it. And we also know the presence of stomata. We have already discussed in the nutrition chapter that small pore-like structures, they are present in the epidermis, right? That is the guard cells enclosing a pore is called as stomata, and they are present in the epidermis, right? And we do have the cuticle also. Cuticle, epidermis, then we have the palisade cells, spongy cells. So this complete is a structure of leaf. Now xylem vessels are interconnected. That means all the xylem vessels which are present in the plant, they are interconnected, right? So once the water enters into one part of the xylem vessel, it is transported to all parts because they are interconnected. Now you can see that the xylem vessel of leaf is connected with the xylem vessel of root, right? And in the root also, like if you will observe the structure under the microscope, you will see that we have the endodermis, right? We have the cortex, we have the epidermis, we have again the root hair and the cuticle. This complete is the structure for the root. Now you can see that there is a root hair, right? There is a root hair and it is surrounded by the soil particles. Now whenever plant requires water, how it obtains water? Obviously we irrigate the soil. We irrigate the soil or we apply the plant with water. So if you are irrigating the plant, right, now how it travels such a distance? The question is this. Now for the transportation of water from the soil to the aerial part, right, so the factor that is responsible is called as transpiration pull. Obviously there must be some force which is taking water from the soil particles to the aerial parts. So that factor is transpiration pull. So we are going to discuss the transpiration pull first. See, you all know that plant has the ability to transpire. What is it? What do you mean by transpiration? Transpiration is a process in which the plant leaves has a tendency to, you can say, lose water in the form of water vapors to atmosphere. And this loss of water occurs through the stomatal pore. Now what happens when there is sun? Now when there is sun, it means during a daytime, right? So the intensity of light is quite high, right? Because during a daytime, the sun rays are quite intense. So what happens when the sun rays will be intense during the daytime, the stomatal pore will open up. The stomatal pore will open up. Now when the pore opens up, obviously the transpiration will take place like this. What happens? Just look at this figure. The sun rays are falling, right? The stomatal pore opens up and through it the water is being transpired. Water is being transpired. Now the stomatal pore will lose the water and it will withdraw the water from the guard cells, right? Now the guard cells will withdraw the water from their surrounding cells, right? So ultimately the water is drained out, right? And it is drained out through the xylem, because the xylem vessel of the leaf is responsible for supplying the water to complete leaf, right? So ultimately the water is withdrawn from the xylem vessel of leaf. So due to this, the hydrostatic pressure of xylem vessel of leaf falls down, right? Because the water is being transpired, continuously taken up. So obviously it will lead to the lowering of hydrostatic pressure of leaf. Now, if the hydrostatic pressure of xylem vessel of leaf lowers down, we know that there is still water present in the xylem vessel of root, right? And everything moves from higher concentration to lower concentration. So what happens? The water from xylem vessel of root will move up to the xylem vessel of leaf in order to compensate that lowering of hydrostatic pressure, right? So it will move from xylem vessel of root to xylem vessel of leaf in order to compensate that loss, right? So as a result, what happens? The hydrostatic pressure of xylem vessel of root will fall down. Now, if the xylem vessel hydrostatic pressure for the root will fall down, it will withdraw. Now, if the hydrostatic pressure of xylem vessel of root will fall down, it will withdraw water from its surrounding cells, that is from the endodermis. Endodermis will withdraw water from the cortex. Cortex will withdraw from the epidermis, and the epidermis will withdraw water from the root hairs. And from where the root hairs will withdraw water? Obviously, they will withdraw water from the soil. So that means the continuous channel is formed. That is, the water enters from the soil to the root hair, right? Root hair to epidermis, and then we have cortex. Then it moves to endodermis, then xylem vessel of root, then to leaf, and from leaf it moves to mesophyll cells, and from mesophyll cells through a stomatal pore it is being transpired. So this complete channel which is formed is called as ascent of sap. So I think you got it, and now you can easily, I have confidence in me that I have explained you well, and now you are in a position to write down the ascent of sap, that what exactly is this process. Right, so this is all about ascent of sap, that is the continuous channel which is formed for the transportation of water from roots to the aerial parts of plant. And please do not forget about the factor that is responsible, because the factor is transpiration pull. So transpiration pull is actually responsible for this movement, the continuous channel which is formed for the transportation of water from soil to all parts, that is the aerial parts of plant. So with this we finish the transportation of water and minerals, because minerals also flow along with the water, because they are present in water and the soil, and when the water moves, the mineral also flows along it. Right. So the transportation of water and minerals is done by ascent of sap. So now let's discuss about the translocation of food, that how the food is translocated now. So let's study about the translocation of food now, that how food is translocated or how it is distributed to all parts of plant. So phloem helps in translocation of food, right? And this is how the phloem looks like. See, if we study about phloem, we'll see that the phloem also consists of 4 components. So let's list them up. So the first component is sieve tubes. Phloem consists of sieve tubes. We have the phloem fibers, we have the companion cell, right? And we do have the phloem parenchyma. So out of these 4 components, what happens, like all the components are living except the fibers which are dead in nature. Right. So in xylem, all the components were dead except the parenchyma, and in this case, all the components are living except the sclerenchyma. Right. So basically, if somebody asks you about the basic division of phloem, so instead of writing these 4 things, we can also specify it that the phloem is divided into 2 major parts. The one part is the sieve tubes and the other part is the companion cell. Now we all know that food is synthesized in leaves. Now in leaves, where it is synthesized? It is synthesized in the palisade cells of mesophyll tissue, because palisade cells are those cells which carries the chloroplast, and we know that for photosynthesis the photosynthetic pigment is required, right? So this is how the leaf looks like, and you know that this is the mesophyll tissue, and in this mesophyll tissue, these are the palisade cells carrying the chloroplast. So in palisade cells, the photosynthesis take place. Now, due to active transport, that is due to the energy involvement, the food which is basically in the form of sucrose, it is pushed towards the sieve plates. It is pushed towards the sieve plates. Now the question must be arising in your mind that where these sieve plates are present, right? So look at this. What do we have is, we have these long tubular structure. These are the sieve tubes. Right, and you can see that on both the sides they are giving rise to the partition sort of things, like the partition sort of structures. These structures are called as sieve plates, and you can also see that like the sieve plates, right, they are joined by this complete cell which is a companion cell, right? So if we talk about sieve tubes, right, and the sieve plates, they are living in nature. They carry cytoplasm, but there is no nucleus. So all the substances which are required, all the essential things which are required by the plates and the sieve tubes, that is fulfilled by this companion cell, because this is a complete cell possessing everything. So it can actually fulfill the demand of sieve tubes and sieve plates. And you can also see that within these sieve plates, we have the pits present, a small pore-like structures present. So what happened? Due to the active transport, the food enters into these sieve plates through the pores, right? And from these plates, it moves to the sieve tubes. And the sieve tube for the whole plant is connected. So once the food enter into the sieve tube, it is translocated to all parts. That means the sucrose and the other nutrients that are distributed to all parts of plant. So this is what is called as translocation of food. So I think you got it, that how this vascular bundle phloem actually helps in translocation of food.